And welcome to Off the Tee. My name is Chris Exusion. You can find me at Chris Ebom on Twitter, on the Heat Ratio Network, and at OTT Matchups. And just finishing up on the Wells Fargo tournament, Rory McIlroy rising from the dead, if you will, finally winning a tournament. It's been a long drought here. But without further ado, my guest here, John, PGA Tout on Twitter. You can find him also on the PGATout.com. Has amazing write-ups, and it's got tons of information, a great voice in the golf betting world. John, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Happy to be here.
Yep, absolutely. What I love about John here is that I'm always looking for good information as far as like to start my week. And it's been so hard to find like a good write-up, a good, scenario of like what's going to be really happening. It seems like a lot of stuff comes out on Monday. So I'm like picking and scrapping. I'm trying to find like a really good spot to like get my work done early because Sunday's happening. All my bets are in. So I'm pretty much just watching and waiting for the most part. And John at the PGATout.com has an amazing write-up, tons of great information just to get your work done. And I respect it, and I appreciate him for putting it out there. And it's very valuable information. So if you're looking to bet the PGA or get a good grasp on DFS, be sure to go on the PGATout.com and to make sure to follow at PGA Tout on Twitter.
Yeah, thank you for the plug. I think we were talking about this before that I gave it my best shot on the preview this week, but there's a lot of guesswork this week, and the name of the game for the AT&T Byron Nelson in 2021 is just keep your eyes out for more information, because there's only so much that we could know coming into this week, but we're about to learn a lot as we hear more from the players, as we hear in the media and the practice rounds, how those are going. I think we're starting to learn more day by day. But the preview definitely sets the tone for what the guys who built the course are going for with it, why it's designed the way it is, players that do well in this sort of, in this area of Texas and what this course demands. So there's still plenty of value information in that article. And then for the rest of the week, I'll be writing up my bombs and values, which is my favorite article of the week, where I look for the long shots, like 100 to 1 plus bets that I think have some equity. And then especially from a DFS standpoint, the guys in the 7K, 6K range that I think definitely making the cut, equity as a floor and potential to go top 20. So be on the lookout for that. And yeah, after that, I also do like my faves and faves articles on Wednesdays, and then I post my final card, usually Wednesday afternoon before the weekends.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're busy all week. You're getting good info out for the people. You're even talking about your long shots that you're trying to get your hands on. And people got to realize when you take these 100 to 1 shots, 80 to 1 shots, they're not necessarily going to be winners. But guess what? If they're in contention on the weekend, guess what? There's a lot of hedge opportunity that you can do with some of the other guys, which is very important in golf. There's tons of value in golf. That's why I love betting golf more than any other sport. It's absolutely amazing. There's a sweat for a small round, the whole week matchup, round one matchup, anything else. And before we get into the Byron Nelson, anyway, I just want to talk about the Wells Fargo. It's just some of the bets I had last week. Luke List, I was all over, plus 335 for top 30. He was a guy I absolutely loved. He was in my top 10 in my model that I ran. Bubba Watson was plus 250, and Grill was plus 225 for top 20. So those were good ones as well. And a matchup that I love, Bubba Watson minus 114 for Shane Lowry, barely making the cut. And then he just went haywire the opposite way, going like plus 1,000 on the weekend. So overall, a profitable week. We were so close to leader after first round. We almost went back to back. So the week before, I had Keegan Bradley 80 to 1, and we almost got Keith Mitchell at 110 to 1. If it wasn't for that double bogey on 16, I think we at least would have tied Phil Mickelson. So it was a heartbreak, but we were close. It was a great sweat nonetheless. So what were your thoughts about the Wells Fargo?
Yeah, I didn't realize you were also on Keegan, so we were there together for the first round, later 2 rounds.
That's what I like to hear.
Yeah, and I had Patrick Rogers last week, who didn't actually, as a first round leader, he didn't actually give a sweat, but it ended up being he had 2 doubles in his round. If you remove those, he would have tied the first round leader. So somewhat close. You never know with first round leaders. They're always a crapshoot, but I think you kind of said it in the beginning that golf is the best sport to bet, because you can bet these long shots and they're gonna hit. You just don't know who's going to hit. So if you bet Keith Mitchell last week, you were sweating the guy at 100+1 odds. So that's the beauty of the game. You're always going to have a chance if you spread your units around a little bit. For me, Wells Fargo last week, great tournament to watch. Not a great one to sweat for me. I had a top 20 on Rogers that I thought was money in the bank when he was the leader through 36. And he had 2 triples on Saturday, so he quickly plummeted to not even sweating them for a top 20 at the end of the week. Patrick Reed was an outright that I had that was probably the closest to getting in there.
Yeah.
He was tied with Answer. So if he had an Answer like Sunday, he could have been in the sweat, but just a solid top 10 finish for him. I didn't, it wasn't a very profitable week for me last week, but they can't all be. And
No, it's very
quick
hard
to
for
turn the
sure.
page this week.
Yeah,
And
so
happy for Rory too.
yeah, of course, yeah. And Answer is one of those guys. I always feel like I'm on the wrong end with Answer. It's like him and Hatton. I'm always on the wrong end. Like if I roll with them, they plummet. If I'm against them, then they make a nice little run. So I'm like, screw those guys. I don't even like playing those guys that much. But my buddy Mike's checking. He says, "How are you guys doing?" We're doing well, man. Talking about PGA betting. DFS we're going to get into eventually. Everything's good here, man. So thanks for checking in. Appreciate it. And yeah, so without further ado, I wanted to get into the AT&T Byron Nelson over here. So it's at TPC Craig Ranch. It's par 72, 7,468 yards. Pretty much a bomber's paradise for the most part. You got to be able to bomb the ball to do well here. The rough isn't that high here. You won't be penalized as much with water. They have like a creek that goes by, but I really don't think it's really in the play. It's just for more looks for the most part. Driving accuracy will not be a factor here at all. So it doesn't matter where you hit it. As long as you hit it long, that's pretty much about it. It's the Tom Westcup design. He also designed TPC Scottsdale, which is the waste management tournament that everyone loves. So that's something to always kind of consider to look at when you're making these kind of plays. To try to get like a course comp, if you will. A couple other course comps that I was looking at: TPC San Antonio, the Colonial. I ran some models with those just to try and centralize it a little bit more. There is a lot of uncertainty in this tournament, but just trying to get as much info as possible that can lead into it. John just talked about there's gonna be things leading into it, so it's good to be on Twitter and on just everything, Facebook, just to see what everyone's talking about. Ryan Palmer's a guy that was talking about this is pretty much going to be a putt fest because he feels like anyone that can really bomb it and does really well off the tee, there's a lot of guys like that. So he's like, it's just going to come down to putting, which it does, of course, to some extent, but it might be a little bit more here, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think another comp course that I think is good for this one is TPC Twin Cities, where the 3M was. That's just another TPC that was played on bent grass. And I think the winning scores that you saw at that one, like high teens and just the majority of the field being in that like mid to high teens, that's what I would expect for this. You hear the word birdie fest a lot this week. I don't think it's a pure birdie fest. I think the guys who put on this event were a little disrespected or put back by the numbers that were being put up by Sung Kang and Aaron Wise the last 2 times they won at Trinity Forest. So I think a lot of the impetus for the new course was to get back to a more respectable winning total. They don't want to see this go to 22, 23 under again. So I think maybe just in the way they set up the pins, they'll try to make this as hard as they can. But as you kind of said, it's not a very challenging layout. There's not a lot they can do with this course to make it difficult for these pros. So I would expect high teens for the winner. And if the conditions are calm, we might see it get to the 20s. But you're definitely going to need to hit your putts because, like we were saying, it's kind of a level playing field, tee to green. You can really hit it anywhere off the tee. You're not going to have to worry about too much water trouble. If you're hitting out of the rough, that's not going to put you in too much trouble either. From what I've seen, the greens are pretty large too. So I'm pretty much no emphasis on around the green at all. If anything, you might have to get some sand saves out of the greenside bunkers. I've seen a lot of bunkers on the property. But that seems to be few and far between where you're going to find them because I expect high green and regulation percentages here. And if that's the case, you just need guys who are going to hit long birdies. That's going to be the difference maker.
Yeah, and we got Al checking. He said, "What's up? They have a good show today." Yeah, he's awesome with the Sixers. Love what he does on Heat Ratio. Big supporter. Be sure to check out his content as well. And we got another guy checking in. He says there's going to be rain in the DFW area this week too, Dallas Fort Worth. So maybe the driver will be even more important because you won't get that roll. It'll probably stick a lot more. What do you think?
Rain usually means favors the carry distance of the players for sure. It also means that the greens are going to be more receptive, which means even lower scores. So
Yeah,
that should mean guys are holding the greens even more. This is a fairly long course, just over 7,400 yards, but it's nowhere near as long as what we saw at Quail Hollow last week. So even if you don't have distance, it's not going to be a detriment. It always helps to have distance, but I think a lot of the field, at least half the field, is going to be reaching all of these par fives and two as sort of a barometer for the distance that you need. So I don't know. I think I look at the board this week and there's a lot of guys I like, and it's hard to narrow it down because there's not a specific profile that
no,
you
not
really
at
need
all.
to have success here. And the one last thing I would say too is we talk about Bomber's Paradise, and I think the common misconception is take all the best OTT players for a Bomber's Paradise. But really, if you can't miss the fairway, it kind of levels the playing field for the guys who are not great off the tee. So I would lean more towards approach and great putting this week, and kind of just assume that distance aside, off the tee is going to be pretty much a wash because it doesn't really matter where you put your first tee shot.
No, that's a good point because that has been like the highlight of this whole week tournament. Has been, off the tee is the number one stat that's important here, and off the tee stat anyway for strokes gain is based mostly on distance, not accuracy. So I think that's very important to realize. So you have a guy like Luke List who isn't that accurate off the tee, but man, he crushes that ball, and that's why he's so high on strokes gain off the tee. He's a guy that I think he'll do really well this week, because of that anyway, and his putter's been pretty decent as well. Oh, and we got Tour Picks checking in. Joe over. He says, "What up, fellas? Good stuff." He's on the Preferred Podcast. Does great work there with Chad. Awesome podcast. So take a listen to that as well. Very good stuff there. They do DFS and the betting card as well. So without further ado, let's get into the betting card. Leader after first round. Always the funnest bet on the board. Kind of known for it. It's the best sweat in all of sports betting, not just golf, but all of sports betting. The big odds, even the lowest odds are still like 20, 30 to 1. So when you can even take a favorite at 20 to 30 to 1, it's going to be pretty amazing. Yeah, exactly. Let's fucking go. Exactly my point, Matt. Thanks for checking in. I appreciate it. So I'm going to start things off here. Scotty Scheffler, 40 to 1. I like him here. He's a Texas guy. I ran a model with TPC San Antonio, Scottsdale, and Colonial for first round play through pretty much the beginning of 2020 to now. He ranks 8th in strokes gain total, and he's 2nd in strokes gain off the tee within the whole field. So I think that'll be important. He's a birdie making machine. He's a rise and fire golfer. I can see him getting hot here at the home state of Texas. I think this will be a nice bounce back for him. Luke List, 60 to 1. Pretty much running off a really good run here as far as the last week's tournament. He ran real well with my model that I ran, and I kind of just playing for top 30 to be safe. I should have just played him in the top 10. I probably could have hit like 8, 10 to 1 with him, but that's okay. A 3 to some odd win is always great, so I can't complain too much. I was a little more conservative with it. I expect him to keep that momentum going. He's so good off the tee. Accuracy is not going to really mean a whole lot, and his putting's been really good too of late. So I think that'll factor into it as well. Sergio Garcia, 55 to 1. He's 2nd in the field in strokes gained off the tee, drives the ball over 300 yards. He's in the top 10 in eagle average in the field, and he hits about 71% of his GIRs, which is 3rd best in the field. So as John talked about before, GIRs are going to be important here. And he's posted a little over 4 strokes gained total, 8, almost 9 strokes gained total, and 4.5 strokes gained total in first rounds in 2020 and 21. So he is capable of leading after first round. He had that lead at I believe it was the PGA Championship. I believe he led that after the first day. And finally, for a real long shot, Tom Hoagie, 100 to 1. Ranked 2nd in the field, strokes gained total with this course comp that I just talked about before. Big value for a guy that ranks high at these courses, and he's had 4 first rounds as well in this kind of like model that I ran. So that's a lot for what the guys have been doing. And off the tee, he's been actually in the positive, 16 out of 23 first round. So that's a really, for a guy that's not really known for being real well off the tee, a ball striker, if you will, someone great off the approach game. He's one of the best guys off the approach in the field. So the off the tee numbers are good for him for the first round. So with that and 100-1, that's what I'm really liking there. What are your thoughts over here, John?
Nice. Yeah, I want to ask you actually before I get into it. Do you think there's anything to it in the first round versus any round ability to go low? Because when I'm looking at a first round leader, I'm a little more manual about it, and I'll just look back at like recent events and I'll sort by, all 4 rounds who went the lowest, and then I'll look at the previous events held at this course, which I can't do here. But like for Quail Hollow, for example, I looked at like the previous year's Quail Hollow, and I looked for the 4 rounds who went the lowest, and that's kind of how I went about it. Do you think that maybe like a mental thing or something, but is there something to it on the first round that some guys are just particularly better than others?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've been watching this first round leader stuff for a while because I just love the bet and I love the action. Yeah, I think there are just some golfers that do just play better in the first round. Like you could always take like a Bryson or like a John Rahm or somebody that's like really good, but those guys typically might not lead after the first round. They're just some guys that come out there free swinging. You got like I know you're a big Sebastian Munoz guy. He's a guy that likes to rise and fire in the first round. There's just some guys that just love to play real well in the first round. I mean, like Peter Malnati's one of those guys, the bucket man over there. Yeah, he's a guy that like scores real well in the first round. So there's just some guys that just don't care in the beginning, and they just have a good feel to it. So it's just from watching tournaments, watching PGA Tour live. I'm always watching PGA Tour live. So like I'm always seeing these guys like kind of, I'm trying to get a better feel of it. Besides the analytics, like I lean on a lot of the analytics, but you also have to take in some elements of just the eye test, if you will, which I feel like is important to some extent, especially for Sundays. I think I need to incorporate that more when I'm taking live bets on Sundays because I'm all like numbers and I don't want to be biased. That's like my number one goal. Like I don't want to have any hatred towards some players. Like I'm like, this guy sucks because he's burned me like 10 times. I try not to do that at all. So yeah. So I think there is something to it when it comes to first round. My man Flat Mitchell checking in. Thoughts on John Catlin? Won in the Euro Tour. I like him a lot. Big money for top 20. You have any thoughts about him?
I tweeted out about him when I saw it. The first thing I thought when I saw the field this week was we got to see John Catlin, and I've heard so much about him, but I haven't seen him play. And the response I got, because I don't watch a lot of Euro, but a lot of people on Twitter do. They said I think it's 3 wins in his last 15 events on the Euro Tour, which is crazy. There's nobody on the PGA Tour that has that stretch, so you can't ignore that. From what I've heard, the events that he's won have been softer fields than the usual Euro event. And when he's not winning, he has a bunch of miscuts. So it strikes me as a good like outright flyer, right? He's either going to win or he's going to miss the cut. Maybe don't throw him in your DFS lineup. I don't know much about his game, to be honest. It's not going to be in Fantasy National. I believe datagolf.com. You can look at some of his Euro strokes gain stuff. That's a free resource. But he's not a bomber by any means. And I believe, if I'm going off memory, his wins have come with a hot putter. So maybe that translates here. Most people who win on tour are going to do it with a hot putter. He's done it 3 times. So I don't think you can ignore that. I also don't know at all, like if they're playing on bent grass on the Euro Tour. I don't know what grass they are playing on. Maybe somebody in the chat does. But I think you have to weigh that as well because, that matters, especially if we're going to put such an emphasis on putting.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that I heard he's a USA guy, but he plays all over the European Tour, which is kind of like out of the norm. But, it is what it is. You play where you qualify for. I mean, I totally understand that. Yeah, he's a guy I heard about briefly. I don't have a whole lot of info about him personally, so I'm kind of staying out of the way for the most part because I just kind of want to see what he does because he does seem like a boomer bust kind of guy. So maybe if you want to make a bet on him, why not maybe take him if you can find him in a make to miss cut, bet if that's out there for him. It might not be because he's such like a not a big name. He might not be thrown out there, but that would be a possibility as well. We got
he's also I was just gonna say he's also in the PGA Championship next week, so those
Oh,
odds are
nice.
already up. If he looks good round one, because we haven't seen what he can do on this turf. If
Right.
Catlin looks good to start, maybe throw a future outright on him at the PGA Championship because we're about to see how he stacks up on the PGA Tour.
No, absolutely. Owen's checking. He says, "Any interest in riding Wyndham Clark with me this week, fellas?" I mean, I can personally understand. He's really great off the tee with his driving. His accuracy is absolutely terrible. So that's something to consider because it doesn't really matter to be accurate at this point. So I think he's a guy that can possibly, maybe make a little noise. Maybe you can get him in a top 30 market where you might get good value with him, or top 40, because he's just a guy that hasn't really done a whole lot. What are your thoughts about him?
Yeah, Owen's great, dude. Shout out to Owen. He's co-host of the Draws and Fades pod. I was on
Beautiful,
with
nice.
those guys last week, and he had a Sam Burns winner a couple weeks ago. So,
beautiful, nice.
Shout out to Owen. Wyndham Clark, actually, really good segue too, because he was one of the guys I was going to bring up as a first round leader. I don't know. I don't think I'm going to play him as an outright because I am going to put a little more emphasis on approach than I am off the tee. I love the distance. I want to say he was either first round leader or first round leader at the Genesis, or at least he was like the clubhouse first round leader. I think it was like between him and Matt Fitzpatrick.
Right.
But those two guys have a similar game. They're both in this field this week where they can hit it a long way and then they're going to hit their putts. And he's great around the green, which doesn't matter so much here. His problem is the approach game. It's a shame that it's not better because if he had like a poor average approach game, he would be one of the best players on tour because everything else is there. He's like second on the PGA Tour in driving distance, which is obviously going to go a long way. So really good DFS play because he's pretty cheap and he has that high ceiling. And I like him as a first round leader because he's gone low to start rounds and he has that sort of game where he's going to set himself up. He's definitely hitting all of the par fives and two. That's not a question. So that's going to give you eagle opportunities, which is that's all you're asking for in a first round leader, especially at this course. First round leader, he'll be on my card. Book it.
All right, beautiful. Without further ado, let's get into that first round leader. So Wyndham Clark, what odds do you have him there?
I'll pull that up. I think I saw him at like 125. And I think just generally speaking with my first round leader strategy, and I use the term strategy lightly because there's no science to it. Everybody wants to find like the silver bullet, like give me my first round leader picks and I'll tail it with you. But the truth is, like, I do it for entertainment. 4 days of golf is a lot of golf, and nothing's going to change what happens Thursday to who's going to win this tournament. So if I'm not betting first round leader bets, it's hard for me to really like sink my teeth into the first round of golf. But with this, I always pick guys in like the 60 plus to 1 range. And I really should look back on this because I want to say like everyone besides Cam Smith at the RBC Heritage for like the last 10 events has been a 60 plus player to catch the first round leader. And even in that event, he stole that away from Stuart Sink, who was like 100 to 1. So it's just a really good place to try your luck on some long shot guys. The payouts are great. You throw a few bucks on them, you win like $200 if any of these hit. And they hit so frequently in that 60 to 1 plus range. So that's always where I start. I hope that the top of the board guys start out slower. And the other thing I would say is the more experienced players, I feel like tend to be a little more conservative in the opening round, just to kind of feel out the course, shoot for the middle of greens, take chances where they need to, but don't do anything stupid to like short side themselves. And the longer shot guys get a little more aggressive. They know they got to make a cut. They want to win. They got to do everything they can to put themselves in that position. So I think the longer odds guys tend to play a little more aggressively, and that's why I kind of target that 60 to 1 plus area of the board.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. I mean, I think that's very important because you always see those big names, and I feel like those are good guys to kind of avoid for the most part. Yeah, once in a while they might have a hot first round, but I think they know they're that good and they have that pedigree, so they just want to get a good feel of the course. I know Dustin Johnson always feels kind of that way. He's always like kind of lollygagging, just trying to get a good feel. He's usually not putting well the first round, that kind of part for the most part, but. Are there any other leader after first round guys that you're going to be eyeing up?
Yeah, definitely. So Sebastian Munoz is where I'm starting. That's 80-1 this week. I've already bet that. I wrote up in my article this week that the first bet placed on DraftKings Sportsbook this week will be me betting Sebastian Munoz to be the first round leader. He went to school at the University of North Texas, which is very close to this course. It's like a 30-minute drive. The Mean Green, him and Carlos Ortiz were college teammates there. Apparently, this is like a regularly practiced course for that team. They have a great state-of-the-art practice facility, so he should have a lot of familiarity on this course. I, of course, always bet him first round leader regardless of the tournament, so I didn't need anything else. For background, that's my tradition. I think we all should have our guys. We all should have our traditions.
100%.
I bet every single time Sebastian Munoz is in the field, regardless of the course fit or anything, I bet him first round leader. He hit 2 or 3 times last season. The first 2 times I was on him, third time I did not bet him and it hit again. And I was like,
oh man,
I will never not bet Sebastian Munoz. One of those times he hit actually was at, I'm pretty sure this is one. PPC Boston, the Northern Trust, and that's where Scotty Scheffler shot his 59. And I know you have him as a first round leader, so it's you want a guy who has gone low like that. Anytime you have a guy who shot in the 50s before, he's always going to be viable for a first round leader. So I love that bet. But Sebastian Munoz in that tournament, I think he birdied the first 7 holes. It was something ridiculous. And that the first time I think I'd heard of Sebastian Munoz is when he did that. And I was like, who is this guy? And then he followed it up like the next week and he did it again. And I was like, that's it. I'm sold on Sebastian Munoz. He's always plays great in Texas. He finished top 10 at the Valero Texas Open last time he was in Texas, and he finished top 10 at this Byron Nelson event last year. So I also like him as an outright, but I'm, of course, going to play him first round leader. And one other guy, I don't have my first round leader set. I was going to definitely play Wyndham Clark as first round leader, so that's funny that Owen brought that up. Definitely playing Sebastian Munoz. And the other guy is Rory Sabatini.
Nice. Okay.
Rory Sabatini is 100-1 first round leader. Also plays very well in Texas. One thing that I noticed about him, TPC Scottsdale seems to be a very good comp for this course, also designed by Tom Weiskopf, as you mentioned. He missed the cut there, but he shot 64, 8 under on Friday. So that's probably going to go overlooked. I might even throw an outright on him too, because he just seems to do well in this area. I believe he's from Texas as well. So it always, it's always good when a guy's from an area and plays well in that area too. That just feels kind of repeatable to me. And he has that ability to go low. Again, that was the second round where he went low. But to me, if it's any round that you're going low, you got my attention, just that ability to get a bunch of birdies. And he can get hot with putter. We know that. So, these are flyers, but that's what I'll be rolling up the dice on for sure.
Nice. Yeah, it's I call it the lottery ticket. It's like your free roll into the week. If you actually hit it, you pretty much won your week for the most part, and you could have some bets on the side. It's just a fun bet. You can put a couple bucks on it. I think the most I ever put on it was like 10 or 15 bucks, and I was like really splurging. But but it's a fun bet for the most part. Roy Sabatini, it's funny you brought him up. I had him one time to lead after first round. I think he got like second at one point. I had him at like 110-1 or something. And he's a weird cat. Like, he's just a weird dude. And like, no one really likes him on tour. It's really funny. Like Jordan Spieth, like there was this clip of him like driving this ball, and I think it might hit Rory Sabatini. And he's like, oh man, did I just hit Rory Sabatini? He's like the one guy not the head. He must just be such a jackass, but I don't really know. But it's just like,
that. I think that was at the Players.
Yeah, it was at the Player, because that was the every shot tour thing that was going on, which was like amazing coverage, because PGA hasn't been that great with their coverage. But that was like, you could watch any any golfer with any shot. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, those are some good guys to look at. It's just about guys that can really shoot low for the most part for the first round. We got Matt checking in again. Any love for Sepp Straka this week? He's been up and then down last week, streaky as hell. All hell. Yeah, he's kind of like the guy that, like, if you bet like PGA for the most part every week, there's always some guy out there that's always talking about Sepp Straka. Like, he's always like the sneaky play. I feel like he's like, oh, he can do really well. So he actually didn't fly under my radar this week. I'm just looking at some of his stuff that he has here for the most part in his last 50 rounds. He does drive it over 300 yards. He really doesn't do really a whole lot. Probably his best stat that I'm looking at right now is like his birdie average, and that's not even all really that great. So he doesn't really wow me per se. Maybe you can take a flyer on maybe the first round, maybe like a top 40, but I really don't see much with Sepp Straka this week. I might be wrong, but he just didn't really fall really too much into any of my models. How about you?
Yeah, he's a sort of an eye test guy where I see him on like the top of leaderboards, and I don't really understand how he got there. So I think I'd have to look into the rounds, but he does seem like the profile of a first round leader where he can put a low round out there, but he can't do it 4 straight days. So he's not a guy I play very often in like DFS or outrights, but I definitely have played him at least once as a first round leader. Again, I think like you, he didn't really pop up too much in my research this week. So I don't have much on him, but if you like him, like I was saying before, if you got anything to like about anybody this week, it seems pretty open. Like you catch a hot putter, it doesn't really, you got to be really bad spraying it off the tee to find yourself in trouble. And your irons, I mean, that's what it comes down to anyway, because you got to hit your approach as well. It looks like he's had a pretty good stretch. I'm just looking at his logs. He's got a pretty good stretch of approach. So if you got that, you're going to have a chance here.
Yeah, he even brought up that he just liked his approach numbers from longer distances, which is going to be important because if you're not driving it that well, guess what? You're going to have a long approach shot. So I think that's very important. But just for the record anyway, when I have my model right over here that I'm looking at that I ran, your boy Sebastian Munoz, he fell into the 8th best player on my model. So
let's go.
So I think I'm gonna jump with you with Sebastian Munoz. I'm gonna play him for first round leader too, just because you came on my show. Your team Sebastian Munoz. He's part of the Fighting Mean Green. I love the Mean Green. I think that might be my most profitable college football team, believe it or not. When I bet college football, I love North Texas. They always seem to cover for me constantly. So they're always a fan for me. So they never screw me over. So I think I'm going to ride with you with Sebastian Munoz. I'm joining Team Munoz with you this week. So I'm ready to roll with that.
Nice. I was going to ask if you have strokes gained Texas in your model because I invented that one this week.
No, I do not. Tell me more about it.
I just threw every course that is in Texas over the last 5 years, and he came out, I think, 9th in the field, nice. Just strokes gained total at those courses. So that'd be like TPC San Antonio, Colonial, Trinity Forest, Golf Course of Houston, and Memorial Park, and Austin Country Club.
Houston Open, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Nice. So, and he plays well at them consistently. That's another guy. If you're from the area or at least familiar with the area and you play well consistently in it, I love that floor. That feels repeatable to me. And Munoz is a guy I don't bet outright very often because he doesn't really have a profile. One week he's putting really well, one week he's good with the irons, one week he's good with the driver, but rarely is it all together. But for whatever reason, when he's playing in Texas, it seems to all get together in his comfort zone.
Yeah, and we didn't even talk about the one Texas guy that everyone talks about all the time, Mr. Texas himself, Jordan Spieth. He's Mr. Volatility. He's a guy that can never hit the fairway, it seems like. He's a guy that always sprays it around himself. I just feel like his number is just too crazy to take for the most part. Like, it's pretty wild because even a guy that's the favorite like Bryson, I would rather take him over him 8-1 compared to him to 11. I believe Spieth's 11-1, I believe right now. So it's not that much of a difference. And I mean, what are your thoughts about Spieth this week?
It kind of feels like Groundhog's Day this week with the Valero Texas Open, where we were going into that week, a week before the Masters, and we were kind of questioning how much these top guys in the field actually care about this event. Are they just tuning up? And that was enough for me to fade Spieth, and he won. So I think Spieth is a guy who is from Texas and really relishes playing in Texas. He's got such a big following and fan base there that I think he wants to put on a show for his fans. And he grew up, playing high school golf there and everything. So he has a big base there. I think he's going to come ready to play, and it doesn't really matter what he's doing off the tee because it's hard to miss his fairways. And he's actually been really good off the tee in this little renaissance of his the last few weeks. So if there was something to worry about, I would say maybe the layoff because he hasn't played in a month. I think he hasn't played since the Masters. Yeah, he hasn't played since the Masters. So that to me would say maybe this is a tune-up this time because you don't want to do nothing between the Masters and the PGA Championship.
Sure.
And just general philosophy from me this week, I don't want to put a ton of units into an event where I'm not 100% on the modeling and everything. We're doing some guesswork and stuff, and we have a major next week. So for me, I want to have enough investment in this tournament to keep me interested, and I don't want to put in the units to have me be vested in a guy sub 20-1. So I think the construction of my card is going to be spreading out a few more flyers in the long shot range.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. There's a lot of uncertainty with this. And I think the fact that you brought up that Jordan Spieth hasn't played in a month, this usually when you think Texas, you think Jordan Spieth, but I agree with you. I think it's a tune-up round for him. I don't think he's going to really care about much about this because he already won that Texas event recently. He got that monkey off his back. Now I feel like he's above that at this point. I don't think it's good for him to bet in the market. I just don't know how he's going to truly do. I don't know if the whole month off is going to be really good for him, honestly. I mean, he was playing pretty decent at some point, and then he ended up taking off for the most part. I think I was the only guy in America that didn't like him winning that Open. He's killed all my Masters odds. I had Finau like 35-1. He ended up going like 40-something, 50-something. And then I had Molinari 100-1. That went up to like 150, 160. So like Jordan Spieth winning that event like screwed up every future that I had. I mean, they weren't winners, but at least like if I would have had some value with them, I would have really liked it. One of the big value plays that I actually have for a future for the Open Championship across the pond, I have Victor Hovland 80-1 that I did last year. So I'm letting that marinate for a little bit. It's currently at 40-1. I'm a big Victor Hovland guy, big Rise and Fire guy. I feel like he could win a major, and that could possibly be it because of like how the terrain is there. He just ball strikes anywhere as he pleases. So that's one I'm kind of hoping for that I can really cash off with for the most part. But I want to get into the top 20 now. A couple guys that I had in mind. Luke List, I'm going back to the well again, 2.5-1. He's a guy that did really well last week. He was in my top 10 for my model, as I talked about. His best category is off the tee, and his distance is huge with this. He's going to continue to play well when it comes down to it. He's fifth in the field in eagle average, where he's been huge scoring. It'll be huge scoring off these par fives. And 3 out of his last 4 events that he's actually made the cut, he's been in the positives in strokes gained putting. So I think that's a good correlation. If he's going to be making the cut, I feel like he's at his best form right now for the most part. I don't think he's played as well as he's been playing right now. So I assume he's going to make the cut. And if he's going to make the cut, I feel like he's going to putt well on top of that. He could be very valuable for a bomber like him that could separate him from the rest of the field. If he's putting real well, he's going to be extremely dangerous. You brought him up, a North Texas guy, Mean Green, Carlos Ortiz, plus 225 for top 20. He ranks 8th in the PGA in par 5 efficiency from 550 yards to 600 yards. That's pretty much what you're looking at with the par 5s. They're going to have some really long par 3s as well. I think they have 2 or 3 really long par 3s, and then they have like one real short one. It's kind of a balanced kind of field when it comes to the par 3s, but there are some long ones there. He played really well at TPC Scottsdale the last go around. He got 4th, I believe. So he had a really good showing at the Waste Management. Is that kind of design? So I think this is a good bounce back for him. He's ranked 12th in the field in strokes gained total, with the course comp model I talked about before. Drives the ball 305 yards. Really solid putter. You were talking about how important the putter is going to be. He's a guy that really putts it well consistently. I'm not a huge guy of incorporating the big putters, but I feel like in this spot, being in Texas, which is pretty much a home course for him, like you said before, this could come into effect. Ryan Palmer was talking about being a pretty much a putt fest. So I think he can definitely do well in that kind of field. And everyone's favorite enemy, Sergio Garcia, plus 163. He ranks second in the PGA in birdie or better in par fives. He's ranked second in strokes gained off the tee in the field, coming off 2 straight cuts. I feel like that long break that he's had, I think it'll be good for a veteran like Sergio Garcia. He played well in that match play. I don't really like to take too much into consideration with that because it's such a weird field. I think it actually favors more the international players when it comes to that match play. So I think you can take it with a grain of salt, if you will, but he is a veteran. And the fact that he's been low on odds for top 20 for being on 2 straight missed cuts, being under 2-1 plus 163. I think the books really think highly of him. And I don't know if a lot of people are going to pull the trigger on plus 163 with Sergio, but I think I'm going to. I think I'm going to take a flyer there. So Luke List plus 250, Carlos Ortiz, the mean green specialist, plus 225, and Sergio Garcia plus 163. What do you got for top 20?
Yeah, I would also add for Sergio. I really like him this week. Just to do well. He's known as a great ball striker. He hits the ball far. And I was watching him. You speak of PGA Tour Live. I was following his group at RBC Heritage, and he had some really terrible ball striking numbers. But I was watching that round, and he like bogeyed one hole, and then he got really aggressive with all of his lines. And he just hit every water hazard because he was going for par 5s and 2 that he shouldn't have. I just think if you only look at his recent numbers, they might be a little inflated by, he kind of fell off a cliff on that round when he realized that he was kind of out of it. And he showed at the Sanderson Farms that he can get a hot putter going and win. So he's the guy I'm thinking about for sure. The more we talk about, long driving being important. So I like that. For me, I don't bet top 20s all the time. I did bet a few last week. But I tend to bet more matchups and matchup parlays is what I like to do. But when I do bet top 20s, I'm looking for like plus 600 and higher. I just don't like to put a lot of units into top 20s because it's a little volatile. So if I am able to hit one and I have a strong hunch on a guy who's a value, I'll do it that way. So I would say one guy that I like is Patton Kizzire. And we talked about, it was brought up in the chat, Sepp Straka having good long distance proximity. Patton Kizzire has great long distance proximities, top 10, 175 to 200 and 200 plus. Him and Bryson, I think, are the only two to be top 10 in those two categories.
Oh, nice.
And he puts the lights out. Not as great putting on bent as he is on Bermuda, but generally speaking, a very good putter. His Achilles heel is off the tee game. He's just not accurate at all. But he's better than average on distance, and that's gonna help somewhat here. And if you're playing from the rough, I don't think it matters too much. And he's really been improving his approach game lately. He turned that from a liability to kind of a strength. So I like him there. He also had a good Valero showing last time he was in Texas, which is something that I keep going back to. So I think he has a lot of upside for a guy at 100 or 125 to 1 as an outright. He's probably in that plus 600 range for top 20.
Oh, beautiful. So I want to get in the top 10 now. I'm doing something that I normally don't do a top 10. I'm actually considering taking a guy laying juice. I never do this. This is usually like my pet peeve. Like when I'm doing top 10s, I never take a guy. Worst case, I might take a guy plus 110 with a little juice on my side if I'm really liking somebody. I'm actually going to take someone that's actually going to be minus. I can't believe I'm doing it. It's a first for me. So I'm going to do it now. I got 3 guys I like. The one I'm talking about is Bryson DeChambeau minus 125.
That's who I was going to guess.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty obvious at this point, but I think it's almost a slam dunk at this point. From a guy that almost thought he got cut, he flew back and then flew back again because he made the cut. What I found really interesting about him while we know his off the tee numbers are usually real solid, they weren't out of control. He was over -5 strokes gain approach. That's outrageous. I couldn't believe that when I saw that. He did have a really hot putter. Okay. He had 7 strokes gain putting, and he was only plus 1.76 strokes gain tee to green, and he finished 9th in the tournament. So I find that to be really wild. If he could even do half of that at this point at a course that pretty much should meet his criteria, I think this is like the rarity, like the exception this week with it. Another guy that I'm looking at is Sky Scheffler, 2-1, Texas guy. I think this guy can actually break through and win this tournament as well. I really like to see from him because he's really good with the birdie average and he's great off the tee. And Ryan Palmer, 3.5-1. He's top 10 in birdie average. He went right into my top 10 in my model. Texas golfer, like you said before, holds a course record. He's 11th in the PGA in birdie or better percentage, ranked 7th in PGA in birdie or better on par 5s, and he's coming off a very disappointing Valspar, so I feel like this is a real good bounce back for him. And you know how some guys just want to win a tournament, like Max Homa wanted to win Genesis. Jordan Spieth really wanted to win that tournament in Texas. I almost feel like Ryan Palmer really wants to win this tournament. Like it's something in the back of my head. I'm like, I feel like he cares about this tournament a lot, and I think this would hit home to him, and I think that would be a great win for him. And I just think some guys have different agendas for this event because there's a lot of uncertainty. But for a guy that knows the course probably better than anybody for the most part because he's had a great score on there, he's a guy I'm looking at for top 10.
Yeah, well, we talk about Bryson. You know where he flew back to, right? When he got on that net jet.
What he flew to Dallas, right?
He flew to Dallas. He came right back here. So this is his hometown. I think people don't really associate Bryson as a Texas guy. He went to SMU. Maybe people do. I don't know. I don't. I associate like Jordan Spieth and Scotty Scheffler and Will Zalatoris. Like my mind goes to those guys repping Texas. I don't automatically associate Bryson as a Texas guy, but he's a Texas guy through and through. He lives in Dallas. His famous gym is in Dallas. Now, when he wants to get a workout session in between rounds, he can just drive. He can ride a bike. So he's got to be feeling at home. This course, I have to imagine he's played this course before, and it's a bomber's paradise, as everybody's saying. So you got to like Bryson this week. I think if you were ever to lay juice on a top 10, especially coming off a week where he lost 5 strokes on approach, like you said, he's still top 10. Yeah, and he played the par 5s to even par, which you would expect Bryson to be getting like eagles on holes this week. So, I mean, how could you poke any holes in that? My personal feeling betting Bryson is I always seem to get him wrong every time I bet him outright. He misses the cut. So, and you always have to, if you're betting Bryson, you got to have a tight card outright wise. So. I don't always bet him, but he's so boomer bust that
he is. You're absolutely
if you're betting that range, you're always going to have that upside. And I love the Ryan Palmer call. If you got a guy with a course record, you got to think that he wants a win at that course more than he wants the course record. And if he can shoot the lowest round anyone's ever shot there, a top 20's got to be in, or a top 10's got to be in the cards. So he's one guy I might look at as a top 20, depending on what those odds get to, because I'm with you there. And the one last thing I would say about Palmer, too, is it's really just the around the green game that gets him. That's really the only part of his game where he's consistently losing strokes. And if this is like a greens and regulation gimme where everybody's hitting these greens and it's a birdie fest, that plays right into Palmer's strength.
100%.
So very popular play this week with good reason. I don't think you can really play him on DFS because he's going to be so popular. But that's why it's a good way to get exposure to him in those placement markets.
Yeah, so Jared checked in. It's a refire on Mitchell for me since they bent the putter back to normal. How do you feel about him? Well, for me personally, he broke my heart. When he got that double bogey, I was almost counting my money there. It was going to be like a cool, grand or so for me. And I was like, oh, this is going to be great. Like, it was like in the back of my head. And that's like the worst thing when you're that confident down the road. And then I went to check him on like the app and everything. And then I see he double bogeyed. And I was just like, oh my gosh, it looked like he hit it like 2 feet each time. And I was like, you have to be kidding me. And it was
you had an outright on him last week?
I had him for first round leader.
Oh,
110 to
right,
1.
right.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
wow. Okay,
it
I
would have
didn't
been
even
awesome.
realize he was that
I would have
close in the first
pocketed like
round.
a grand or so, and it would have been amazing. And I pretty much felt he went on like a birdie run at like he hit like 4 out of 5 birdies like in the back nine. It was just like an absolute tear, and it was just I was like, oh my gosh, he's gonna do this. This is great. This is gonna be my biggest hit because I've hit like Connor 60 to 1. I hit Keegan 80 to 1. I've hit like a bunch of guys at these like higher odds, but I never hit a guy at 100 some odds. And I was like, oh man, it's gonna be great. I can't wait. I'm gonna go on the radio. I'm gonna be talking about it. It's gonna be awesome. I was gonna probably be brought on
Have
Friday.
you heard?
What?
Have you heard about this bent putter story?
I heard a little bit about it. It was from the last week, right? Where he like had a bent putter or something, and he had like terrible numbers putting.
Oh, it's crazy. For Sunday only, he must have on Saturday like slammed his putter, or I don't know, maybe he loaded his bag into the car and he bent it. And he didn't know he was playing with a bent putter for all of Sunday. And he lost 10 strokes putting on Sunday alone.
Oh my God.
And people look back on his round and they were like, oh man, Mitchell just had a terrible putting week. He lost like 8 strokes total over the course of the week. He was perfectly fine for Thursday through Saturday, was putting with like a 3-degree bent putter. Everything he was missing, he was like missing right or something. He didn't understand why. And it just wasn't going where he was pointing at. He realized it afterwards because he went to like a maintenance truck because he's like sponsored by TaylorMade. And they were like, "Hey, sorry, this is defective. We got to give you a new putter." They didn't drop this story until like Thursday night. So I was thinking about Mitchell because he was a bomber, and he's supposed to putt best on Bermuda. And I saw what he did. Just looking, I didn't think to look individual rounds. I don't usually do that. So I just looked at what he did the previous week, and I was like, Jesus, this guy is putting the worst of his career. He's never been this bad. I'm not going to jump on him now. You can't fix that overnight. It turns out you can fix it overnight if you just get a regularly functioning putter.
Right.
So yeah. Anyway, Mitchell, you would think, right? Like another bomber who can putt, like with a functional equipment, should be a good fit here. Another thing that I heard speculated, and I don't know how truthful this is, but I heard that he won the must have been the Arnold Palmer or Florida event 2 years ago, and he's almost out of exemptions
Oh my
where
goodness.
he needs to basically win another tournament or qualify for the FedEx Cup in like the top 120 for him to like maintain full tour status. So he had a lot on the line to win last week to like maintain that status.
That's
And
crazy. I didn't know that.
he's going to need to like string together a lot of high finishes. So in any case, he's highly motivated. So he's interesting. It's interesting too because he was popular 2 weeks ago. I think at the Valspar, a lot of people had him, and obviously everybody was following him last week. So is Keith Mitchell a guy that people want to follow a third week in a row? Is really the question.
Yeah, I mean that's a really good point. I didn't even know about his whole tour card status. That's a big deal. I mean, that's somebody's livelihood. I guess you would go back to the Corn Ferry Tour, I guess. I mean, I'm looking at his numbers for top 20. He's plus 250, 2.5 to 1. I think it's worth a flyer there. If he's got that much motivation and he has a good course fit, like for as far as what we know of the course, I think that's definitely worth a flyer. And we got somebody checking in on Twitch. I have an interesting question for you guys, but what is it? Can you please send the message so we can hear that question? We would love to hear about it. Thanks for tuning in on Twitch, man. We appreciate it. Yep. And Jared also checking in again. Have you guys spoke about John? Yeah, we talked about him. We don't have a whole lot of info about him. He's like the whisperer on the golf course, I guess, if you will. He's the big boomer bust guy. Yeah, he's a 7,200 on DFS. I don't think he's going to be picked a whole lot because I think the guys that just normally, bet for the most part know of the name a little bit, but besides that, like just the average DFS player, I don't think he's going to really play him. So maybe he might be a sneaky enough play at 7,200. So we'll see over there. Did you have any top 10s or no top 10s?
I rarely bet top 10s.
Oh, okay.
I don't think I will. If there was one guy I would bet a top 10, it would probably be Taylor Gooch this week. He
Nice.
strings together those high finishes. You mentioned that, or I don't know who mentioned. Somebody mentioned high finish at the Houston Open last year or last time it was contested. just he seems to be boom or bust. He hasn't won an event yet, but he seems to be knocking on the door. Has high finishes at the Players, recent TPC events, at high finish at the Houston Open, one of the last times he was in Texas. So has the ability to go low, hits it a pretty long way, very good putter, ability to go crazy with the approach. So I think he has a lot of top 10 equity this week. Again, I'm saying that without seeing the odds, but I'm just kind of projecting. If he's 80 to 1, he's probably, I don't know, a 750 maybe for top 10.
He is currently for top 10. He is plus 550, so it's a little low. So maybe there is something to it. You think he's going to be around that 7.5, and he's only 5.5. I think the books are telling you something there. You might be on to something there. I think five. Because when I always look at these books, for the most part, I mean, especially when I do college football, I think mostly when I do college football, I feel like the line really tells the story. Because they know Vegas doesn't make casinos off of losers. That's what I always say. You got to use the line to your advantage. They don't like giving out money. That's not what they like to do. So for that 550, seems kind of low there. That's kind of near the, Carlos Ortiz, Aaron Wise, around that area, someone that has won this event before. I want to get into a little DFS here. Jared checking in. Snedeker on the DFS lineups. I don't know. Seem to never get him right. 7,400. What are your thoughts about Sneds?
Sneds, I mentioned I don't do top 20s often. I did do a top 20 on Sneds at the Valspar, and that hit.
Nice.
So these questions are really like very specific to what I have to talk about today. This is great. I don't love Sneds here. I think Sneds is very dependent on the short game. Really great around the green, and that's may even be a non-factor this week. I don't know how often guys are going to be missing greens here if the fairways are as wide and the greens are as big as they seem to be. He's not a bomber, so I just don't think this is a very good course fit for him. That being said, if we're talking ownership leverage, I don't think many people are going to be on Snedeker this week because he's not a bomber, and that's I think where people are going to gravitate to. And we know that he can get hot with a putter, so it's not where I would go first. But if you're building a ton of lineups and you want a little differentiation, he's in really good recent form, so I don't hate the play.
You know what? It's so funny, Jared. If you love Snedeker so much, I swear PGA Tour Live always plays Brent Snedeker. I don't know what it is. I pay all this money a month to watch PGA Tour Live. I swear I watch Snedeker 80% of the time. I don't know what it is. He's always on there with the early tee times. Whether I always joke around with Jonathan Coachman on Twitter. I'm like, Sneds is always on the tube. Like, why is he always on the tube? And he actually does coverage for PGA Tour Live. And he's like, I never noticed that. And I'm like, because I'm watching it and I'm like, oh my gosh, Snedeker again. Can I lose this guy? Like, what is going on? I see him constantly. And I'm just like, and he has been playing really well of late. He played well at the Valspar. He played well at the Valero Texas Open. Maybe you're on to something. Maybe he will play probably well in Texas. We'll see here. We got John checking in. Thoughts on Spieth for this week? Thanks, guys. Pretty much where I'm standing, and I think where John is standing as well. Kind of just staying away from him. I think the Texas narrative is a little too much here. I think it's going to be a warm-up round pretty much for him, a warm-up tournament, because he doesn't want to go cold into the PGA Championship. I think that's very important. John brought that up. I thought that was a really good point. I think that solidified it for me even more. So that's somebody that I'm not really looking for. But to win it all, John, who do you have to win? A couple of guys, anybody that you're like, I really see a really good shot with this guy winning?
Well, I guess the lowest number that I bet this week is Will Zalatoris. I bet him at 30 to 1. I think after DJ Witcher, I think he might be down to 22 to 1.
Yeah, probably dropped a lot more.
Yeah, it seems to be a trend where the week after everybody's on somebody, they win, and a miscut is not the end of the world for some of these players. They get a little extra time practice. He gets to go back to Dallas, so keep a couple extra days. Maybe that's helpful for him. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But you talk about needing to hit it a long way and then be a great ball striker with precise approach. He's a prototype for that. I'm sure he's played this course dozens of times, being from Dallas. And his putter isn't the best putter on tour, but it's shown to get hot too. So he's just a guy. He should have played better than he did last week. I was all over him last week, and it's very disappointing. But um, you know, playing Quill Hollow for the first time is no easy task. This I don't think is the first time he's playing this course for a guy who is kind of a rookie and new to everything. So this profiles really well for me. I think it's a good number on him. And I think he's a guy, unlike the rest of the top of the board where we talk about a tune-up. I don't even think he's qualified for the PGA Championship.
No, he's not yet, which is outrageous.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. So highly motivated. If he wins that, he would be in. So and so much on the table with a win for him. He gets his full tour status. He gets into the FedEx Cup and all of that. So he's going to want to prove something to the local fans. He does not seem like a guy that's going to succumb to pressure around him. I just think he's built for being a star on the tour. Obviously, I'm a big Zalatoris fan. I see good enough.
Same here, sure.
Coming off a disappointing week, I'll still back him. But aside from him, if I were looking at the top of the board, a lot of people like Scotty Scheffler this week. I can't really poke. You also mentioned you're in on him too.
Yeah, I'm in on him this week. Yeah.
Yeah, if this is the birdie fest that it's made to be, he's one of the best birdie makers on tour. Another Texas guy, very familiar, as familiar as you can be with the grounds, and the game just suits him. He hits it a pretty long way. He's pretty decent with the approach game and can get a very hot putter. So those are the two most popular plays this week. I hate to just give out the two most popular plays, but
hey,
I do. Yeah, I do have real concerns about the top of the board not being fully in it this week. Maybe going through the motions and just kind of practicing a couple, things they want to work on looking ahead to next week. I think that's a very real thing on the tour for guys who are motivated. So I'm definitely not looking at anybody under 20-1, and those are two guys I think make sense why they're the chalk this week.
No, I understand. Jared's checking also. Is Zalatoris lost? 94th at the Wells Fargo, 42nd at the RBC. No, I don't think he's lost. And I think the fact that you even said he's had experience at this course is a rarity. And, he's always been the new guy at every event, and he's always risen to the occasion for the most part. He's a ball striking machine. Jared also pulled in. He said Fitzpatrick didn't play last week. Do you think he's going to fly under the radar? He's a beast. This 2021. Yeah, he seems like a guy in the big events. He always plays really well with the top fields. That's what I always tend to notice with now it's Matt Fitzpatrick. It's not even Matthew Fitzpatrick. He changed his name over, I heard, and everything. So that's a thing. I mean, he's a great putter, really good off the tee as well. I'm personally, he was originally going to be one of my guys on my card. I decided to stay away from him because I don't think this is a big enough event for him to do really well. Maybe I might be wrong, but I'm personally not going to play him this week. It might bite me in the ass later. But
I like that call. I actually forgot to mention him because he is another guy I was looking at in that similar range. It's like mid-20s. Mm-hmm. He can gain 10 strokes putting in a given round. He's a great putter. And I think he's pretty good on bent in particular. Not really known to be a bomber, but actually does hit it far. Kind of reminds me of like a Max Homa, smaller guy who gets it out there, sneaky distance. I don't think he has a ton of carry distance, so if it does play wet, like you were mentioning earlier, that might not help his case too much. But I like that play, and I'm interested to see if he's kind of picks up steam popularity wise, because if he's going to go overlooked in that price range on DFS, I think that might be where I start my lineups.
Yeah, that's a good point. So to win it all, pretty much, I'm looking at three guys. I'm on the same boat with you. My lowest side guy is Scotty Scheffler. I think this is a spot where he could win his first tournament, especially being home in Texas. Ryan Palmer, he was originally 50-1. He dropped down to 45-1. There's a little steam in the betting market with Ryan Palmer. I think he's one of those guys that's going to really want it in this tournament. I think this will be a good spot for him. And finally, everyone's favorite villain, Sergio Garcia, 50-1. He's so good off the tee, strokes gained tee to green, eagle, pretty much making a lot of eagles for the most part, which is going to be important. A lot of time taken off, a lot of time to reset the battery, if you will, recharge. I think 50-1 is really good value as well. And yeah, so that's what I'm looking at here as well. But I wanted to jump into the DFS section with you. I know you got some sleepers that you're looking into for lineups, and who are some of those guys that they're going to be on your target as far as guys that might not be as popular as people think?
Yeah, I think I talked about Patton Kizzire already. He's a guy that, and I think there tends to be overlap where the guys that I like as DFS values are the same sorts of guys that I tend to target in like the top 20 market. Because I want the upside of a top 20 out of a guy in like the low 7K to 6K range. And I want a floor of, I think this guy can make a cut. Because if you're playing a guy in the 6K range and he's making it through the cut and you're confident in that, that can really set up a lot of freedom in your lineups. This week, as we've kind of talked about, I'm not jumping to get exposure to the top of the board. It's easy for me to just say I'll fade the top guys. I hope that they are not like completely vested in here, and then I can kind of start in like that mid 9K range and then give myself more of like a balanced build this week. That's kind of where I see myself going. So I'm not playing a ton of guys in the 6K range as of now, but a couple 6K guys I like. Rory Sabatini is another one I brought up as a first round leader, but I do actually think that can carry through for the rest of the tournament with just how well he's played in Texas. He's at 6,800. There's not too many guys south of 6,800 that are really calling out to me. I don't know if you have any like super long shot bombs this week that caught your eye lower than that.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the lower end guys, if I'm looking at some of the low guys, I'm looking at let me see. I was kind of looking at Wyndham Clark, Vincent Whaley. Those were kind of guys I was looking at. Seamus Power, he's pretty decent off the tee as well. If you're looking for a low end guy there, Rory Sabatini, 6,800, John Ha, decent. Will Gordon. Those are just kind of the couple guys that I'm just picking off, just looking at the board right now. So if since we're talking about DFS anyway, let's make a lineup. Let's get it started. I'm going to play the lineup, see what we can do with it. I'm going to put it in a single entry because I'm going to go big boom or bust.
I think I'm probably going to do the same.
Okay, so
I'll probably do like one or two single entry lineups this week, and that's probably going to be it.
That's right. And Brian checking it, lineup time. Yep, that's right. Let's do it. I like it. Let's. Thanks for checking in, Brian. We really appreciate it. So I'm going to let you get first pick. Pick whoever you want. I don't care, high, low, doesn't matter to me. Who's the one guy you want to have in the lineup for a single entry?
Well, I'll start it because we didn't really get to talk about this guy, and he's a real mystery. I don't think he won't be chalk, but he might be a little popular. Thomas Peters, who I want to say is like 86 or 8,700.
Okay.
8,600. Belgian guy, plays primarily on the Euro Tour. Didn't know much about him, but saw at the Corrales Championship he was the odds-on favorite to win that before the tournament. And I kind of knew the name, but I didn't realize he was like that good. So I looked into his numbers, and he has just nothing but top 20 finishes, regardless of where he goes. I think he was like top 12 at Corrales. Obviously, a much different strength of field, but really good all-around game. I remember at Winged Foot, he was like a 36-hole leader, or at least a first-round leader, and it kind of fell apart for him. But saw him play really well in a long course like that. Has just a very complete all-around game, which is what you want to see at an easy course where you want to get birdies. He's proven that he can get birdies, gaining strokes putting, but he's also very strong off the tee and on approach. So that's the upper 8K range, I think, is not where a lot of people are going to start their lineups or get exposure to, because people like going stars and scrubs where they play like one or two 10 or 9 guys, or they might play like 2 guys in the 9K range because they know like Zalatoris and Scheffler and Fitzpatrick are probably going to be popular. So I think he's in a pretty good leverage range where he has that upside to contend with these guys. He's a much better quality player than the 70-1 odds suggest. He just hasn't gotten a ton of reps on the PGA Tour. So I like him. I think he has a lot of upside as a leverage play to start the lineup.
All right, I like it because I wasn't gonna have him in my lineup, so I love that. And he's a guy. He played on the European tour a lot. Is that correct? So I mean,
Yeah, and he's not
his
really going
bread
to
and
be.
butter.
He's not going to pop in anybody's models really because he's not playing on this tour, and he's not winning as much as John Catlin. But like, don't let that fool you. He's a much better player than John
Yeah.
Catlin. Much more complete game, and he hits it a pretty long way too. So he seems like he's going to be a good fit for this course.
So I'm gonna pick the next golfer here. You talked me into him. I'm gonna roll with you. He's 8K. I'm going Keith Mitchell. He's a hungry guy that's gonna need to do well in this tournament, and he should make the cut. And at 8K, I think there's a lot of value there. Maybe a forgotten guy after that first round. I almost wrote him off. I'm trying to back off some bias. So Keith Mitchell, a guy that really needs to keep his tour card. I think that's important, and he has the skills to do well here. So 8K there. I like Keith Mitchell there, and then we're at an 8,350 player average. We can go either way. What are you thinking?
Okay. I think I'm gonna stay in like that 8 or 9K range. I think I'm gonna go Matthew Fitzpatrick.
Okay.
I think another guy who's kind of right dead in the middle between Will Zalatoris and Scotty Scheffler, who should be the two most highly owned players this week. And I just don't see a lot of guys pivoting to Matthew Fitzpatrick there. And I think that gives you some differentiation. I know it's a single entry lineup, so we're not overly concerned with ownership, but this isn't too much of a stretch for me to say that, if you're deciding between all three of these guys, none of them have won on the PGA Tour. So it's not to say he has less win equity than a Zalatoris or a Scotty Scheffler. I love the ability to get a hot putter here. Very in control of his driver, can hit it a long way. The all-around form just seems to be really good. And if it's just a toss-up between those three guys on ownership, I think you're going to get a big leg up with him.
I think that's important because we're going to do a single entry here. I can speak for myself. Going to do a single entry. With that Fitzpatrick spot right there, we're down to 7,966, and I'm going with the North Texas great. I'm going with Carlos Ortiz, 7,800. I want to get this lineup really weird as possible because if you want to cash in these kind of single entries, I think that's going to be very important. I think Carlos Ortiz is going to do really well. I think he's going to be in the top 20. And if he gets in the top 20, I think it's going to really benefit the lineup that much. So give me Carlos Ortiz, North Texas, mean green. They've done me well before. Let's switch it over to the PGA side. I'm excited about it. And that moves our average up actually to 8,050 right now with 2 spots left. So what are you thinking?
Oh, man. This feels like a cop-out, but I gotta go with the mean green duo. We gotta team up Munoz and Ortiz on there. There's gotta be correlation. If you want correlation in your lineups and you like the familiarity of one, you got to imagine that they're both going to play well. And I want to say that the last Byron Nelson, they both finished top 10.
Nice. Okay, so we got Munoz there. It wouldn't be a lineup without your boy Sebastian Munoz. It's Sebastian Munoz week, everybody. Let's get the party started. Brian's checking in again. He says, this is a great lineup. I'm in. Well, guess what, Brian? I'm giving you the final player right here. 8,500's left. I'm not going to spend it all. I refuse to spend it all because that never wins big lineups. You got to leave some money on the table. And I'm actually going to take your sleeper guy because you know what? I like what you've been talking about on the show. I love the insight. I love your readings on Sunday and everything else for the most part. I'm going your boy Taylor Gooch for 7,900. And that's going to leave us 600 off the table. This is going to be a nasty lineup. This is a really sneaky lineup. And I'm definitely putting this in a single entry. I don't know how much I'm going to put in for. I might actually boost it up a little bit. I'm feeling really froggy because since I'm not going to put that many bets in for the week, maybe I'm possibly going to go a little bit higher on the single entry and really trying to strike gold here.
I love it. Yeah. I've started a tradition now where I'm going to do the $200 single entry for just the majors.
Oh, nice.
And then I'm typically living in the $33 single entry, and sometimes I'll do the $33 and the $12. But I like to make the majors special, so I put more units on the table with my outright cards and all that, and I usually just do one and done. $200 lineup, and that's it. That's nosebleed stakes for me. So
No, hey man, we all
I
have what
don't
we go
mass
after for
enter.
sure.
Yeah, I don't mass enter GPPs. I thought about it, but it's not really. I like to hand build the lineup, so it's not really my steams. Maybe I'll do like a 3x max entry, but for me, I enjoy doing what we just did here and kind of just hand building it, and just talking through the narrative straight of how we're gonna win it.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's pretty funny how you said that. Last week, I decided to. I was talking with Cian Najad on the show. Great guy, great DFS mind. So I had to really, break down what he breaks down for the most part because I wanted to pick his brain because DFS isn't really my strong suit. I feel like the matchup plays are more in my wheelhouse, like the second, third, fourth round matchups where you get the data and see who's been putting on and who's been striking the ball well, things of that nature. And I decided to go with so they have like the $3 entry, like the 20 max entry. So I ended up doing that. So I invested 60 in there to see what I could do with. First place was like 7,500. And I ended up winning like 30, $40. So it ended up still being a win. So I'm happy. But there wasn't no big boom bust kind of, it wasn't like a big win. But hey, a profit's a profit, and we can roll it into next week. So I decided to do the whole max entries for that. So I never really did it before. I always did single entries, and it would be up and down. It would fluctuate a lot. But it was funny that you brought that up.
Yeah, well, it's funny you bring it up too, because I actually did that too last week. I didn't max enter it though. I think I did 7 lineups in the $3 20 max, and I had a cores of Zalatoris, John Rahm, and
I had tons of John Rahm. Yeah, that killed us a good
Justin
amount of my
Stowe. Everybody that I like kind of took stances on missed the cut. So not a great debut for me leaving the single entry world, but I think that is the kind of the goal of why you play DraftKings is to hit a big one. So I think it's great if you don't win, you just kind of survive and maintain that bankroll and try to do it again next week. But that's the goal with DraftKings. You're trying to get returns that you wouldn't be able to get betting, and then you use your kind of betting card to double up your money or do something a little more conservative and like the placement and matchup market. And then if you hit an outright, that's kind of returns in between what you would get from a GPP and your standard matchups. That's kind of how I manage the units and what I shoot for best case scenario every week.
Yeah, so that's going to wrap it up for us today. Thank you, John, for hopping on. I really appreciate it. I've been wanting to get you on the show for some time. I love the work that you can do. You can find him on Twitter at PGA Tout and also on thepgatout.com. Be sure to get all his readings. Very entertaining besides just the info, just in general. It's a lot of fun, his reads for the most part. We're on Team Sebastian Munoz this week. I'm going to be playing him pretty much for the first round leader. I'm going to throw him into my first round leader card, see if we can hit on that. That'd be very exciting. And thanks again, John. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Let's go mean green this week. Let's have a week.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Let's go mean green.
And thank you for having me. This is a great
No
time.
problem, man.
I've been wanting to jump on for a while, so appreciate you having me.
No problem, man. You got it. Thank you.